long time ago, in a galaxy far, far away, a great adventure took place.
Talking Bird, the special edition.
Hello, and welcome to Talking Bird, the special edition, episode 17. When I was 17, I drank some very good beer. I drank some very good beer I purchased with a fake ID. My name was Brian McGee. I stayed up listening to Queen when I was 17.
That was very nice, Robert.
Thank you. All right, I'm Robert. This is John. This is Talking Bird, the special edition. We're in it.
Hi.
You're episode 17, but really it's episode 25. No, that's not right. It's episode 29. But actually it's episode 17.
It's up there. We're getting up there.
It's a long time.
Yeah.
Well, what? You're going to say something?
No, I don't know.
Okay.
No, I remember what I was going to say. It's funny you opened that way. I was just reading David Rakoff's Fraud. We're rereading David Rakoff's Fraud, and there's an essay there about him going to the Aspen Comedy Arts Festival and going to Dan Castellaneta's one-man show and just how, terrible it was.
Oh, man.
So it reminded me of that. Anyway.
Yeah, I was going to do it like Shatner, because today is the 49th anniversary of Star Trek. What a strange anniversary to celebrate. It's like Paramount was kind of saying, hey, with all this Star Wars stuff going on, maybe we should let people know Star Trek's 49 today.
Yeah, for everyone who's feeling left out, for all those Trekkies feeling left out by all this Star Wars attention.
I feel like Star Trek turned 49 today, and it's still living in its parents' basement.
I guess.
I can say that because
how many TV series did that thing have? Are they up to 7 now?
Yeah, and I going back, actually dovetailing it back or coming back to something I'd said on an earlier episode when I had this speculation that somehow J.J. Abrams was going to be involved in the next Star Trek on some level. It's filming right now. I don't think J.J.'s running from the editing bay of Star Wars to work on Star Trek. I don't even know what it's called. What are the new movies called? It's like Star Trek Beyond or something like that.
Out of Darkness.
Out of Darkness. Oh wait, no, it's not.
Because they went into darkness, they have to come out of darkness at some point. They can't stay in darkness forever, Robert.
Yes, that is true. But no, like I said, I'm a Star Trek fan. I own all iteration 6 on digital versatile disc, except for the animated thing.
That's right.
I just can't bring myself to buy the cartoon. I was at a place the other day and they had it really cheap.
It was solid. I remember watching it when I was 10 or 8 or whatever. It was solid.
I don't remember a lot
for the day.
I don't remember it ever seeing it, so I guess maybe that's why it's not important. It's like the Planet of the Apes cartoon. I never saw that. I didn't know it existed.
Yeah.
I only thought,
it easily, stands with your Herculoids, your...
Oh, man, that's my jam.
Your Herculoid, yeah.
You're right in my wheelhouse. Thundar the Barbarian,
Yeah.
See, Thundar the Barbarian. One of the things his sidekick was like a Wookiee type character.
Yeah, it looked almost exactly like the original Ralph McQuarrie conception of a Wookiee.
Thundar the Barbarian.
Yeah.
Well, those were and then I think the Herculoids, they had the Shmoo type characters with them. Wait a second, you're like way younger than me. Where did you see all this?
They showed them like when Cartoon Network first started. That's like all they showed. Okay. They would just show like whatever cartoons they could get their hands on, which was like Herculoids and Thundar and what was it was a dumb one. It was designed to sell
It was designed to what?
Designed to sell toys. Where like
I
don't know, like it would sell toys, but it was like these dudes. They're this, and they would get into like this chamber, and then like suddenly they would turn into an airplane or like a spaceship or like they wouldn't turn into one, but like they had this armor that had holes on it or whatever, and then these like jet wings would come on and go into the holes, and then they could fly or whatever. I can't think of the name of it.
It's not Mask, is it? Mask was all this thing where they would wear helmets. I don't know.
Sorry, cut out. What was that?
No, I thought it was Mask. There was one that was like the acronym Mask, but that's even past my time. I think that was more my brother's.
Oh no, that's not it.
My little brothers. I kind of like. I'm always trying to think about the last time that, because this is appropriate because I'm thinking about Force Friday, but I'm also thinking about like the last time that I felt comfortable buying a toy until I became an adult, and then that became a whole different thing. Because it was for collecting and not for playing, and I think it had to have been 7th grade. That was the last time, and it was an angst-ridden. I think I was standing at a Kmart. I had a Transformers of some sort in my hand, and then I just put it down and I walked out, and that was it. It was like, nah, I can save up. I can buy a Motley Crue tape instead.
Yeah,
get my copy of Shout at the Devil at the Rexall Drug.
Yeah.
So,
Centurions, that's what it is. I just looked it up. It was a Ruby Spears production.
Oh, I don't know this
Centurions.
one. I don't know this one.
It wasn't very good, but I watched a lot. But so speaking of Star Wars, as we have not been, but I think tomorrow, if I have this right, tomorrow it's 100 days until The Force Awakens comes out.
Wow, cool.
Yeah, it's really close.
It's kind of. Do you notice it's kind of? I mean, maybe it's the weather or something, but we haven't heard anybody lining up or anything like that.
Yeah, I think. I feel like everyone is like, yeah, we're excited about this movie, but we remember what happened with Episode 1.
Yeah, also,
although a lot of the people who did that were like high school, college kids, and so today's high school, college kids might decide to do it, but. I don't know.
I dug out I had like the two definitive Star Wars self-produced fan documentaries. Well, at least at the time, which was Star Woids, and then there was Star Wait. And it's funny going back and watching that,
sure,
because like a lot of those people are nearing 40 now, and people got married in those lines and things like that. I wonder if they're still married and I don't know. I guess that thing is like there was two guys that did the lineup here, and they did it for Attack of the Clones, which was real dedication considering that a lot of the enthusiasm,
considering Episode 1 had already come out.
Yeah, and they were out there, and it was like it was just two dudes, and they were out there for 6 months. And I saw one of them once, one of the dudes who's actually since passed, but he was like, shopping for Star Wars toys even after he did that and being excited. It's like, I would think that experience would probably kill your enthusiasm, because I think they were on the Today Show. I think that was as good as it got.
I feel like if you are the kind of person who would do that, then I think if you're the kind of person who did that, then there's like nothing that can diminish your enthusiasm.
Well, yeah, and then it then it came out as like, how can this guy afford to like do this? Because he was like, he was a grown man. He wasn't a child or a teenager or anything. It turns out like it was kind of in the infancy of of wireless internet, when Wi-Fi was just starting to pick up, and he was the administrator for a porn website. And that was what he would sit there and like check his code for this porn website all day while waiting for Star Wars. So that's the
someone's got to administer those things, right?
Exactly. So,
speaking of standing in line, of waiting, Robert, how is your Force Friday? Hashtag Force Friday.
It was kind of a reality check in some respects, and not because anything happened to me, because I didn't go out. I know I threatened to say, I'm going to go out and stand in line, but I guess they started that Force Friday global unboxing thing.
Unburnsing at sometime on the Thursday at like 2 p.m. Pacific, which is my time zone. And for some reason, after about 4 hours of that, I've put my enthusiasm in check. I'm surprised you even lasted that long. That's
that's
a long time to just sit there.
I just let it run,
waiting for stuff to happen.
I just let it run on the TV. I didn't stand there and. I'd go upstairs and downstairs and be like, are they still re-showing the birth of the lightsaber? Because that's what they would do. They would, there would be, it was the two of the people that were involved in the coverage for the celebration. And I don't know what the schedule was because, like I said, I kept coming and going. But I think they were there for like 18 hours. But it wasn't 18 hours of them transmitting. But after a while, they just didn't seem to know what they should be saying.
Right.
And they were, they bring out the toy. The first one
hey, look, it's another Finn. This version of Finn has a gun instead of a bag.
And it's like the first one was it kind of felt very like, they're not against connecting. It was
really.
I'm sorry, what? You cut out.
Oh no! Just I'm sure in the beginning there was like all this enthusiasm, like we're really unboxing new Star Wars toys, and then by like you said, hour 4 or whatever. So we here's yet another Kylo Ren. This one's slightly bigger than the other one. Helmet looks about the same, and the cape looks about the same.
And that's kind of how. I mean, the first unboxing was Jay Lagaya who played he was in Attack of the Clones. He played the Amidala's valet or security guard or whatever. I forget the character's name. And so he was all excited.
Not Captain Panaka.
Not the most negative guy in Star Wars, Captain Panaka. No.
Not your favorite prequel trilogy character.
Yeah, the Eeyore of the galaxy. No, anyway, it was nice to see. I was like, okay, they're not like hiding people from the prequel. Somehow it's like, like you can't be around,
right?
But then it just seemed to be like, I don't know, watching grown adults getting excited about stuff that really wasn't that cool.
Yeah,
and it's like they had some guy, I forget what country, maybe it was Taiwan or Hong Kong, and he had like this weird I don't even know what they call it. I should look at my checklist. But it's this I had something very similar to this when I was a kid, and it's like a spinning Millennium Falcon, and then you can swoop down and like knock over a TIE fighter or whatever, and all of these electrical sounds. But it's just this thing. It's that kind of thing that it takes up an entire kitchen table, just annoys your mom. Because I mean, I had like I had one of those that was like Star Trek. And it was the Enterprise, and it was on a fan, and it had a counterweight, and you could like, if you adjusted the weight, it could actually go faster. So you can, and the fan, I mean, we're talking, you could just stick your pinky up into it and take a tip of your finger off, and I'm like 7 playing with this thing. But these things are not like that. I mean, everything is locked down. Everything is super expensive. I mean, I looked at, see, I watched them, and then the next day at about 4. Actually, Force Friday, I went to Target, actually the one right by my house, so I didn't even have to go out to the airport one to see what there was to see. And at first, I was like, "Oh, they got a lot of stuff," and then I started realizing, like, I kind of thought the figures were the 3.7 inch figures
Right.
They were all gone. I mean, and I expected that because it's the cheapest buy-in for a Star Wars thing. It's like,
Right.
But they had a lot of like, I call it like Ray's Fudgesicle Speeder or whatever. It looks like a Fudgesicle. They had one of those. They had one of those BB-8 toys, and I was all like, "Oh, this is really cool." Oh, and it's only like $60. And the guy, somebody came in and he goes, "Oh man, that's not the one they were showing. That's one of those. That's the cheap one that just moves if you make the clicking sound with your remote. It's like the really nice one is like $150, and I'm like, not spending $150 on a toy.
Yeah.
And then the way No, go ahead. No, go ahead. No, I was just
go ahead, caller.
Okay. Am I on the air? So then I went to then I found out that I was actually only looking at a small section because they had like the BB-8 and all the stuff and your Star Wars place, and I was like, okay, well they're pretty cleaned out. And then I realized there's a whole nother section in the back corner of the store for Star Wars, which is where all the non-toy stuff, well, they had toys too, but it's like the coffee mugs, now these are back. They're pictures that are fabric. They printed the thing on fabric and then they tack it to a wooden out frame, so it looks like something from the, looks like something for somebody's stoner party basement kind of stuff. It's like they should have it like have black. It should activate in black light or something. So they had that, and then they had a lot more of these molded toys that are like the 12-inch or not 12. I think they're even bigger. I think they're like 15 or maybe 18-inch of molded Kylo Ren, molded Luke Skywalkers. They didn't have. It was kind of like they had a lot of Darth Vader. They had a Darth Vader that was like this huge Darth Vader. It was obviously not life size, but it was like it would go up to the shoulders of a kid. It was just this kind of weird thing where it was like, and I don't know if they were because they were so cheap or something, or they'd been sitting in a thing, or 8,000 kids had touched them. Like the batteries were wearing out already on the little sound things. It was like, Luke. I am your father. I was like, who's gonna buy this? There seemed to be a lot of Kylo Ren stuff that went unbought, and it kind of, I'm starting to think Kylo Ren's not going to be as cool a character. Like he doesn't inspire kids to be like, I really want this kind of thing, more than say like Captain Phasma or whatever. Yeah, but it's just. I mean,
I went to Target today, and I saw a bunch of Kylo Ren stuff left over, which I don't know if that's just like you said. The demand for this wasn't as high, or if they just made so much of it that demand was still pretty high, but they just made so much that there was still left over. But I mean, part of it too is, like the movie hasn't come out yet. We still don't really know that much. Like your average kid who might buy some of this stuff or want some of this stuff, like they don't. I'm sure they're not like keeping up with all the latest rumors of the plot and who these characters are or whatever. So they might Kylo Ren might be as cool and interesting a character as Darth Vader, I guess, but we just don't know, right? We're not going to know for another 100 days or more,
right?
And so, I mean, their strategy with this, I thought, was so weird. I mean, I understand they want to this is part of their building momentum, and I mean, I guess they don't want because I was going to say, why not just wait until the movie comes out? Then everyone knows, oh, okay, Kylo Ren is this kind of character. I think Kylo Ren's pretty cool. Or, I think Rey is awesome, and I want all the Rey stuff I can find. And then, for that Christmas buying season or whatever, that's when you put it all out, and you have this Force Friday thing, and then people go nuts for it. Because now it's there's demand for, general Star Wars stuff, I guess, maybe. Yeah. Or at least people are aware of it, but it seems like the people who would be super into a lot of this stuff this early are going to be your 30-plus-year-old collectors who just like collecting stuff. Where and kids might be into some of this, they're like, oh, this Finn character looks interesting. I'll get a Finn, action figure or whatever. And they can do whatever they want with that character. But like, yeah, if they're banking on, oh, everyone's going to go nuts over Kylo Ren and who Kylo Ren is, and he's going to be the new Darth Vader or whatever. Like, well, maybe, but we don't know. Like, for that to happen, we need to know and see what Kylo Ren does,
Yeah, it's almost like, well, and I'm making a huge jump in stuff, but it's almost like the marketing. It's like, well, you're marketing. It's like, it felt like this was almost kind of marketed to older nerd types because they kind of know the framework of Star Wars, and they're like, well, if they're going to promote this guy as the bad guy, this is the bad guy. I don't need to know exactly what his motivations are. I'm all right. Whereas a kid, I think, at least, I don't know how kids play now. I mean, I assume it's a little different because of the internet and whatnot. But it's almost like kids are waiting to be instructed on how to react to those things, because you could arguably say, like, if your kid wasn't super well versed in Star Wars, they just pick up a Kylo Ren and go, is this the good guy? Is he the bad?
Right.
It's like, what is this? I don't know how to play with this yet, so therefore I'm not interested, because now everything has, like, Marvel heroes. They say Marvel's America's the Avengers, America's world's mightiest heroes
or whatever. I mean, it's the context, right? What makes these characters compelling isn't just like, oh, by the way, there's a guy named Poe Dameron and he flies an X-wing. You're like, okay, fine, right? It's the context, right? What made Darth Vader so imposing and like neat and magnetic was the context in which he first appeared in the movie, and storming in and walking through and force choking a guy, and you're like, wow, that's awesome, I've never seen that before, and who is this person? But with Kylo Ren, you've just seen him like turn on a sword in the snowy woods.
Exactly.
And that's kind of it. And you're like, oh, okay. Well, I guess he turns the sword on.
I was like, you forget the second teaser. He goes, talk to the hand. Really fast.
Right. That's right.
So have you had a chance to hear the voice of Kylo?
I have.
So what's your review of the voice?
It's fine. I mean, it sounds. It reminds me of, like, I don't know, like horror movies or other science fiction movies where they're trying to like create this sense of unease by making this voice, and you're not sure if it's like a male voice or a female voice, and it could be it's like neither. It's kind of this like neuter voice, like and this isn't a horror movie or anything, but I guess one of the things I thought of was in Detective D and the Mystery of the Phantom Flame. I can't remember it's like the royal wizard or whatever, when in the guise of the deer.
What are you
talking?
The
deer talks.
What are you talking about?
Have you never? So there's this movie. Okay, so let's back up. So there's a movie called Detective D and the Mystery of the Phantom Flame. It's directed by Chewie Hawk. It's great. It's really good. It's like a martial arts detective movie. It's really, really good. So it takes place in China. There's this Empress of China, and the Empress there's like, I can't remember the name of it. It's like a royal wizard or the royal, let me look this up real quick. It's basically like a royal, kind of wizard, but, yeah, I'll just keep saying royal wizard until I look. Yeah. Anyway, so at one point, this wizard, you think, is like taking the guise of a deer, and the voice that comes out of this deer is this kind of like, oh, I don't wanna, it's like you're not sure if it's a male voice or a female voice, and it's sort of it's like supposed to be mysterious.
I see.
So that is one of the things that I thought of when I heard Kylo Ren's voice.
Yeah, I mean,
that is my answer.
That's a stretch. I'm thinking this is some obscure movie from the 70s, and I'm looking up. It's like, this came out like 5 years ago.
Came out like 5 years ago, yeah.
Yeah, so I'd have...
Andy Lau's in it. He's really good. Tony Leung's and Karina Lau are both in it, and they're very good. I recommend the movie for anyone who likes detective stories and or martial arts movies. It's good.
I will have to check it out.
And Choi Hawk can be kind of really uneven, but this is one of his better, especially more recently, one of his better things. So
cool.
Yeah.
I mean, I will give it the benefit of the doubt, even though it's like some of the lines and stuff. All of a sudden, it sends me into speculation mode. But the voice itself, you know, it being recreated on a microchip inside a piece of plastic, or was it a mask, a toy or a mask? It
was a mask. It was one of those, like, they did this for Marvel with like the Iron Man mask, or Hulk or whatever, and so this is just the same idea. Or I guess the Transformers Optimus Prime thing was like the first time this came out, where you have just this mask on and it's Optimus Prime, and then you press a button and it says Autobots assemble.
Right.
Yeah, that was like the first time we saw these things. I think.
I mean, it's almost impossible if they're gonna do like a thing where they add a sub tone on his voice or something like that. A little chip in a mask is not going to be able to recreate that. So when you get in the theater and stuff, it might be like really deep and have like overtones and be really cool if it's a whole idea, like the homemade nature of his lightsaber and I think that might be cool. It's one of the things.
Yeah, I think I'm worried. So first of all, the Abbott. I was thinking of the character of the Abbott in Detective D. But I guess with the voice, like I'm pretty, because there was a video of the Captain Phasma mask and the voice, and that one was like there was so much metallic distortion on that it just basically sounded like a British or an English woman talking to me.
Yeah.
But the Kylo Ren, at least the one I saw, it seemed pretty relatively clear. Like the video and the audio. I mean, so it sounds like, they're trying to make him seem like kind of cold and like emotionless. But I'm just worried that in the movie, it's going to come across as like underacting again.
Right.
I guess that was sort of my worry when I heard the voice. I was like, oh, this is going to be, come with me, resistance is useless.
Well,
and it's right. And it's supposed to be like, oh wow, like this guy, he's cold and calculating, and underneath that there's all this anger or whatever, but it's just going to come off as just like underplaying everything, I guess.
Exactly. It's kind of like, it's the guy that never wears a shirt on girls, like going, hey guys, we've got to. I mean, they're already kind of setting up for there's these parallel lines of dialogue where the thing with sorry about that, I just made a really awful sound with my mouth. I was like, I made that thing and I'm like, I can't hear myself through the mic, and then I'm like, when someone's listening to that, they're gonna be like, ew, I can hear his teeth.
Yeah.
There's a whole at last we reveal ourselves to the Jedi, at last we will have our revenge thing from the Phantom Menace, and there was this kind of like something like, oh, we have to get the last Jedi, or there's a line, and I'm like, oh, they're kind of doing a parallel type thing where, which also, I mean, that's a pretty big spoiler. It's like there's not going to be, at least as far as that concerned, Luke may be the last Jedi, or maybe we're thinking that. I mean, we don't know. That doesn't make sense because everybody's saying like there's been an awakening or whatever. Are they after?
Right.
Are they after Finn because they think he's the last guy Jedi, or are they after Luke because he was the last Jedi? I don't know. It's kind of, it raises some questions.
Yeah. It does. It does. So we also, in addition to hearing Kylo Ren's voice for the first time, we met, I guess, the Guavian Enforcers. These are new characters that we haven't seen before. There are little figures for these things. They're security soldiers of the Guavian gang, because isn't that so much more descriptive than their name, the Guavian Enforcers? But what do you think of these things? Because this is sort of like, oh, it's sort of a new design we haven't seen before. Did you see it? Did you have any thoughts on it?
Yeah, I keep forgetting what this is, but So they kind of have these helmets that look like they've got an O in the middle of it.
Yeah, they sort of look like
they're humanoid, but they may or may not have human faces.
Yeah, I mean they sort of look like Manic 8-Ball from Venture Brothers a little bit,
or even like Deadpool a little bit.
Yeah, that's a pretty clear influence. I think.
I wonder if
on
these
this
are
design.
I wonder if these are like cyborgs. You know,
I don't know.
They didn't really. So I mean, we don't even. Are they good or bad guys? I don't.
Or neither.
Yeah, I haven't heard anything.
I mean,
we saw a picture of them. We saw one of them running in something that looked like the same hallway that there was resistance. Well, I mean, is it the same hallway we saw? A stormtrooper walk Poe Dameron, and then later did we see? Is that the same hallway?
It's certainly a similar looking hallway.
Are they reusing hallways again?
Please reuse hallways. Please reuse hallways instead of trying to create them digitally.
That's like a total JJ thing because he did that for Star Trek. I remember the behind the scenes. He would use the.
That's everyone does that. That's how you save money.
No, we don't need to save money. It's Star Wars. They can spend all the money.
No, they need to spend all that money on
better toys,
digital effects. On the digital effects. But please do not skimp on the post production and the digital effects. Please make sure those look as good as they can.
I don't want to hear "good enough" uttered in an editing bay.
Good enough. Well, it doesn't look great, but the movie opens in a week, so we'll just go with it.
All of a sudden, you just hear, "Oh, this will be Trevorrow's problem. I don't care."
Yeah,
it's like,
yeah. I mean, we have this is the Guavian gang. And there was that Lego thing a while back where we found out there was something called the Conja Club gang. So maybe we're going to get like a gang war somewhere in this here movie or in this here trilogy.
In this here Star Wars.
In this here Star Wars.
Yeah, I don't know much about them other than that people are like, what's up with the O-head?
Yeah. I mean, it looks fine. It's kind of generic looking, honestly. Like this could be from any sort of vaguely science fiction-y thing you might.
Yeah, and it might be a very small kind of thing. It's like it's like all the creatures that get introduced in Attack of the Clones. When it's like, the banking clan shall, the Guavian gang we're down with this, that kind of thing. And it might be 2 seconds and it's just for effect.
Right. I mean, I could see, something like in what was that second Batman movie? Dark Knight? Was that the one with the Joker with Heath Ledger?
Right. Yeah.
It's like called Dark Knight. Yeah. Where he like meets with all like the competing gangs or whatever. Like I could see a scene like that where Kylo Ren or someone is meeting with representatives from gangs to try to, instead of using bounty hunters, he uses these gangs to like find
the last
someone's
Jedi.
lightsaber.
The last Jedi.
Yeah.
Did you have a chance to hear the Boyega doll, to hear his American accent?
I did.
Yeah.
Sounds like an American accent.
It sounds like a British dude doing an American accent. It's the old thing where they think we all work on docks.
Mm-hmm.
Hey everybody, this is my American accent. I was, I'm from London, but now I live in Bakersfield, California. We all sound like this.
Mm-hmm.
I guess I heard somewhere else that somebody said like Boyega did an American accent in the 24 miniseries that he was in. Well, I have not watched, so I guess I think he gets from the kind of the line. I get the idea from just some of the lines out of context that he might there might be some humor. He might be the hopefully. Well, there hasn't been a lot of there's been a lot of nostalgia in these ads. There's been a lot of surprises and feeling of like, oh well, things are kind of different in Star Wars now. But one thing that there hasn't been any kind of tip of the hat to is that there's been any kind of like, oh, we might actually laugh at some of these. There might be some jokes in there, but like, you know, the original one and
right. Like some of these things might be fun. Like people might be having fun when they watch these movies. Yeah, you're right. There's this bit like earnest, like we're trying to get this right. We really, really care about Star Wars, and isn't it wonderful that Star Wars is this thing that everyone loves? But yeah, you're right. There hasn't been as much acknowledgement that like, oh yeah, part of that is like Han Solo like made fun of people and like they were jokes, not really jokes, but just kind of like snide remarks.
People getting knocked down a peg constantly,
right?
Next to each other.
These kind of like snide remarks, and you're like, oh, that's, you know,
Nerf herders and
Carrie Fisher, you know, doing what she does.
Which I don't, you know, I kind of get the feeling if she's in a limited involvement in this movie, she won't be the humorous wisecracking lady that we all expect. But who knows? Anything's open. It's it was this whole thing. It's like, or something like, I've had a really I think Boyega's line was something like, I've had a really bad day, and which obviously is probably referring to how he meets up. I mean, there was a whole, I forget what it was, like one of the toys actually had some spoilery type stuff where it was this, you know, where it's like something happens and he makes a decision to change, and then he has to meet up with these people, which, I mean, anybody who has experience of storytelling could know, well, obviously that's what's happened, but that's the first confirmation. There was always some kind of implication that Boyega's character Finn was some kind of undercover stormtrooper, and that, you know, something happens that his cover is blown or something like that. Which doesn't look like that's the case.
Right.
The one other thing that I said, and this is a spoiler for people, so, you know, go forward knowing that they brought back the old trope that the big thing in this episode is going to be a weapon that can destroy an entire planetary system. So it actually might be I don't know.
Well, let's just say we know that there is something called Starkiller Base, and we are finding out that that's not just like colorful language, that is just more descriptive than anything else.
Yeah, so we're doing there's another mega weapon plot, which
mega weapon. Sorry.
No, it's the Dark Saber. It's the
Sun Crusher.
In the comics, there was actually, this was a pretty good run on the comics between Empire and Jedi and the original Marvel. There was something called the Tarkin, where they just built the gun, which I guess Darksaber was the similar thing.
Yeah, I was gonna say that.
They kind of
and there was something called like Galaxy Gun at one point too, wasn't there?
Oh, I think you're right.
Like they kind of did it's the Death Star, but only the laser. Like they've done that a couple times already.
I know it's completely like, it's like, well, I guess that you can either have a mega weapon, or you can be like, systems are complaining about excessive excise taxes on trade routes, and you're like, oh no. I mean, I really don't. Yeah. Star Wars is a simple story. If they came up and like, you know.
Yeah.
Everyone needs to get to, Cloud City in time, and then it'd be like, oh, I guess they didn't want to overthink it.
Well, yeah, I mean, and that's reading the making of that original trilogy, reading those books, the J.W. Rinsler books. You know, when Lucas, I mean, one of the things Lucas sort of did get right with these scripts is, eventually anyway, was the structure, and like he made sure that there was, you know, what's called sort of like a time lock at the end, and especially in A New Hope and Return of the Jedi, right? There's this, like, something is going to happen at a certain time, and they have to get there before that happens. So whether that's destroying Yavin or the second Death Star becoming operational, whatever, right? Like, there's a thing that's going to happen. They may not know exactly when that is, but like we sort of know that we're going to reach this point where something bad is going to happen, and that they have to prevent it before that happens. Whereas with the prequels, like there wasn't a lot of that as much. it's just like, well, we'll put a big duel at the end, but like,
everything
it could have had. It's not like, oh, they had to fight him now, otherwise something bad would have happened, right?
It's almost like every episode ends about 10 minutes before you want it to. Yeah. Where you're like, like, what happens? What do you mean that now they know there's a Sith? Oh, movie's over. Oh, now there's going to be a Clone War? Movie's over. Oh, now Darth Vader is rised? Movie's over. It's like, oh.
So, and because, Larry Kasdan knows how to write a Star Wars movie. I was actually thinking of this last night, and like, they've given him a lot of power and a lot of sort of say over how these movies are going to work, both with this one and then the young Han Solo movie and everything, right? But if you look at his experience working on these and the Indiana Jones movies, like he understands how to translate that kind of like old serialized thing into this kind of movie experience. Like he knows how to do it, and so I would imagine that. And this may have come in before his involvement, but I would imagine that, having this Star Killer base or whatever is to try to get back to that. Like, all right, we need a structure. We need this time lock that these people are, have to get there in time, not just because it conjures up memories of like, oh, fighting the Death Star or whatever, but because it's good structure, right? It gives shape to everything else. Once you do that, then the rest of the plot kind of falls into place. So in that sense, like, I'm kind of glad that they're doing something like that, or it's encouraging to see like, oh, okay, they remember how to put these things together. Or it's a sign that they remember how to put things together. Now, how that ends up in execution, right, and that they're calling it Star Killer Base, and that, like we just said, like, we're on at least like our 10th mega weapon or whatever. It's maybe it's not the most original way to do it, but
only our third canon mega weapon,
right. Just the fact that they're like, oh, okay, we need to have this thing that everyone is going towards, because then that gives us a third act, and once we have that third act, then the first two acts kind of build themselves. Right? Like that's encouraging that they've remembered, oh yeah, this is how a movie is written, and it's not just George Lucas coming up with designs and then saying, well, I'll figure the rest out in the editing room.
Exactly.
Because that's a mess. So since we're still sort of generally talking about Force Friday, I mean, is this... Well, I'll preface it. There are two things I want to say, and I think they're related. One is that, I mean, so Force Friday apparently was not good to everyone, and we've heard and seen all these stories online about people showing up at a store and, the first 20 people being able to grab as many toys as they want, even though the signs say they can't. And so then, like, the 21st person in line goes in and, like, they're all out of something already. Right. And, like, how does that happen? Is it the store's fault for not stocking enough? Is it the store's fault for not letting people only take one of each, like, whatever. So just thinking about all that, and then, kind of all of the hype about like, oh, we've learned these toys are going to be in stores, and these toys are, and there's going to be this version of a Kylo Ren and that version of Kylo Ren or whatever. I mean, so I thought, like, maybe is this like the new record store day?
Yeah.
And you've experienced record store day, I think, more than I have, because I never really got into it. But it's record store day, for those who don't know. It's this day every year. It's supposed to celebrate kind of small independent record stores, and to get people to encourage people to go shop at these stores. Record labels will put out like special versions of things, or like, oh, this special green vinyl, green clear vinyl version of Bob Dylan's Blood on the Tracks or whatever, or here's a cassette tape version of that album you like. Yeah. And it's turned into this thing where it used to be like, oh, here are cool, like, rare versions of these things that are hard to find, and now it's turned into kind of what I said, like, oh, here's like a green clear vinyl version of Blood on the Tracks, or here are the Foo Fighters like releasing a new music video and that you can buy on disc at only these record stores, whatever. It's like that's not really that. It's just promotional for the bands. It's not really about like helping these stores out anymore. But like I said, you have more experience with Record Store Day, and you are sort of more up on that. So am I way off on this, or is this?
Well, no. I mean, as far as my credentials, it may not be as good as you think. I'm not a collector of music, although I buy a lot of music. It's like my whole thing is like I don't care what color the vinyl is. If I open something up and it's got some cool vinyl on it, that's great. Yeah, but if
I guess I mean in terms of, because I live in Austin, you live in Seattle, we have record stores all around us, so we hear about all this stuff. But you probably at least like pay more peripheral attention to like what's going on with record store.
Yeah, I mean I think it's slightly different because it was at least in its infancy, Record Store Day I think was a way to promote an industry that is kind of in its winter. It's near the no matter what they do, they're not going to be in 10-15 years there won't be as many record stores as there are now, and there's actually not very many record stores even in a town that's considered a music town like Seattle. There's really not as many places to buy music as there used to be. I worked in a record store for 8 years, and I was out of it way before Record Store Day started, and even so, we wouldn't have been a place that would have carried stuff like that. But yeah, it's that kind of idea of false scarcity, and you have to get down. And I would really hope that Disney's not trying to feed a secondary market through these toys. And unfortunately, I think that's a little bit why Record Store Day is kind of in some respects is a joke, because it is that thing where it's like, oh, here's a 12-inch remix of something done by some famous person of some band, and it's like, comes in this super great colored vinyl, and it comes with some stickers inside of it, but it's at the end of the day, it's like either it's an album you're familiar with already and you're just buying it as an artifact, or they actually
they remastered Graceland again.
Yeah, they didn't, or they don't put a lot of care to it. Because you can go to a record store. There's always those things that's going to sell really fast. But there's a place that I go to in what is it, September? They still have bins out front called their out in the vinyl area with saying it's the record store exclusives, and you can still buy most of them. Because and that happened a little bit with the Star Wars, is that people bought a bunch of it and now they're trying to flip it on eBay, which I think if you're listening to this show, you're probably not someone that would do that, but I would encourage you to, if you need a voice of reason, don't waste your money on something scarce, because it will come back. You'll find it eventually. Much like, I need the clear version of REM's Green. You're going to eventually find it because, or just buy.
And isn't that experience of like finding it in a random store, you haven't even thought about it for a while, and then you find you're like, oh wow, I've been looking for this forever. Like, isn't that so much rewarding than just like shelling out $50 for it on eBay or whatever?
And also you end up with that situation, you can never enjoy it because you're always thinking about how much you spent on it, and then you wanted to open it. I made that mistake. It was actually, there was when they had that huge, Sub Pop did a huge 25th anniversary festival. It was like a one-day thing, and it was literally down the hill from my house. It was the best day of a free concert ever in Seattle because I didn't have to make any effort. One of the great things is that they had a record, all these independent labels, and one of the places that I really like is Death Waltz, which they specialize in reissuing, or not reissuing, actually doing editions of horror soundtracks. And I got all excited because they had all these heavily discounted ones, because the Light in the Attic is another reissue label that's actually based out of here and Los Angeles, but they carry Death Waltz. So anyway, I'm getting off the topic. I bought a bunch of I bought like They Live, and I bought Halloween 3 on vinyl, and I'm just like, I'm so happy. I love John Carpenter soundtracks. And then they sat in my record collection for 2.5 years because I was afraid to open them. Because I'm like, well, if I open them, then if I could turn around and flip them, well, then I won't be able to flip it because having it being sealed is so much more. And then I open it up finally because I thought that was silly, and the vinyl looks so great. Then I think to myself, well, do I want to play this? Is my stylus on my record player worn out? Am I going to ruin the record playing it? And it's like, so I'm no vinyl expert. And I was like, so now I have them sitting there, and they're beautiful, and I don't use them. And it's kind of like, I worry that, there's either the high-end Star Wars Black Series, stuff which looks really great, and then there's the cheap molded stuff where it's like I almost bought a Finn thing. It's like, oh, I'll get a Finn one and I'll put it on my desk. Then I looked and I'm like, oh, this is like he's not articulated. He just he had a good face sculpt because the 3.75 inch Finn. Like, I do not like his face sculpt. He has, like, kind of a weird expression on his face.
Yeah.
Where I saw a Chewbacca one, and why do they all come with armor? That's not going to be... They all have, like, this slip... Like, Luke with slip-on armor. And, Finn with slip-on armor.
Oh, so there are a couple. There's a There's a version that comes with armor. There's a version that comes with armor, and then there's a version that comes with, like, weapons that you combine... Yeah. Like, there's a series, so, like, there's the Jungle series, so it's, like, Luke and... Kylo Ren and Captain Phasma or whatever, and you combine all their weapons and it turns into like a chair or something. Right. It's the weirdest thing.
It turns into the Iron Throne. What?
Yeah. So there's a series where they come with armor.
Yeah, they didn't have.
It's the weird because like Chewbacca's armor looks so bizarre to me.
Yeah, they only had those the regular single figures. They were all gone, so I only saw I guess the ones that they cost slightly more and they come in a little box, and I didn't get any because like I said, I kind of had this weird crisis of interest of this thing. I was like, I felt like all of a sudden it was 1999 again, and I'm standing at a Toys R Us, and I'm like basically plunking down a good chunk of my paycheck for a bunch of stuff that I know I'll end up dropping off at Goodwill 10 years later.
Right.
So I was like, that's what happened, and I walked away not having bought anything, and it's a little bit. I don't think it's too much sour grapes, and more of this. I didn't think there was the quality, but like I said, I didn't see there wasn't any Captain Phasma, which aesthetically that's the one character I like. I'm actually not even 100% sold on the new Stormtroopers. I know that's terrible. I know, but this is the idea where people keep going, they're like Stormtroopers, but they're iPhones. Like, really?
Right. Oh, it's what I said. It's people are going nuts over Malibu Stacy's new hat. Right? Exactly. Like, they just redesigned the helmet slightly, and people are like, oh my god, new Stormtrooper. Like, it's the same. It's not that different.
I like that original. I kind of wish they'd stuck to the old design, just because then you'd have the idea that like things aren't going so well for the Empire. They had to recycle.
Yeah.
It's like the idea where like, but everybody obviously, even though they're in a perpetual state of war, I guess the military-industrial complex still exists in the Star Wars.
Still, the banking clan is still
exactly
still funding them. Yeah, I mean, so I mentioned earlier, I went to Target this morning, and they almost got me for a couple of things. I almost bought all the Black Series figures were gone, but they had some vehicles, the titanium, like a Y-wing, and I can't remember what else they had. And I was like, oh, these look pretty good. Like, these are done well, and they were cheap. They were like $5 or something, but I ended up not getting them. But yeah, the figures just are... I mean, the larger ones are fine, but those 3.75 inch or whatever, the Finn, he looks like hippie. Like his body shape is not John Boyega's body shape. It's so bizarre. Like he looks bloated or something. Like if John Boyega like ate a bunch of pizza and then there's like
action or just
went to bed ate a bunch of pizza, went to bed at 2 a.m. and woke up at 7 o'clock.
Yeah, and that guy is like I follow him on Instagram. That dude's like on the top of a mountain 3 days a week.
Yeah, right.
He's obviously in it for the long haul, because it'd be like there's no rest for that guy. It's like he was getting on it. He's either on an airplane or he's climbing a mountain with his brother or something. It's crazy.
Yeah. In like a decade, when he's finally done with all these movies, he's gonna do a role where he's like, finally, I can eat whatever I want for 3 months to get into this thing.
Yeah.
I can have a beard if I want. Whatever.
I think maybe Hugh Jackman and him should be friends because I feel sorry for Hugh Jackman. I mean, the dude's like 47. I just recently. I don't feel sorry. I have a feeling
Hugh Jackman likes working out.
Yeah,
he likes keeping.
I'll get to stay fit. I love it. I love staying fit. Actually, that's more of a New Zealand accent. I sound more like Rhys Darby. Anne Murray, present. But I rewatched the Wolverine, the one that's set in Japan, and that guy's like so freakishly ripped, and it's like it must hurt so much to have to do that.
Yeah,
but
so the reason I asked about Record Store Day is because, I mean, is this kind of Force Friday thing? Like, is this going to be an annual event?
Oh, I hope not.
For a while, because we're getting movies every year for the next 5 or 6 years or whatever. And, some of them are going to be in May and some of them are going to be in December, whatever. But, I mean, they're going to be releasing toys for all these movies, right? Like, we're going to get a little Donnie Yen figure for Rogue One and Felicity Jones. And then we're going to get, for whatever episode 8 is, we're going to get, John Boyega and Daisy Ridley and like different armor.
Right.
In their, I don't even know, in their underwater gear or whatever. So like, yeah, like, is this going to be an annual thing? I mean, certainly I don't think they'll do the 24-hour unboxing marathon or whatever it was.
No, I think they learned
every year, but this kind of like, oh, let's create a day where all the toy stores have them all at once and you have to stand in line to get these toys. Like, I don't want to see that happen, but
yeah, you're going to see
I could see this turning into, that's one of the reasons that I was also thinking of Record Store Day. Is like, are they going to find a way to make this like an annual thing now?
Yeah, I bet you they will. But I mean, there's so much. People are so inundated with stuff. Even though the actual like inventory that people are complaining about, like not enough figures, people that actually went to the trouble to go wait in line weren't getting the things they wanted, which is sad. It'll be interesting because it's almost like they cannibalize themselves, where it's like, okay, well, they're making a concerted effort to kind of sidestep the prequel era just because they've milked that for all it's worth. But they also, they don't want to give up any of that, classic trilogy thing. So they have the Luke figures, they have the Vader figures, and then also they have, tons of Rebel stuff because season 2 of Rebels.
They had a little bit of Rebel stuff. I will say that I feel like there was probably more original trilogy stuff out there than there was Rebels.
Yeah, I would. That's
again, I think I mentioned this on Twitter, but the only Rebel stuff they had, it was Kanan, Zeb, the Inquisitor. There might have been a little bit of Ezra stuff, but that's it. There was no Hera. There was no Sabine.
Yeah, wow.
they might have had Chopper and some stuff, and then they had one of the things I almost bought was a little Ghost, their ship, but there's no Hera, no Sabine on anything. There was nothing,
and that's a bummer.
So yeah, and so it was a little disappointing. But yeah, I think you're right. It's they're not really sure what exactly they're supposed to be marketing. They're just trying to market like Star Wars as a general property, but the fact that they have so many of these. With Marvel, right, you have the comic books and you have the movies and you have some TV shows, but it's essentially like the same set of characters.
Yeah.
Right? Like the characters in the Iron Man comic are not that different from the characters in the Iron Man movie, right? There's not there's not a whole different set of Avengers in the comic books than there is in
there is the Ultimate.
Well, you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Whereas this, they've got like Rebels, which is a whole different cast and takes place at a different time. And then you have the movies, you have the original trilogy, and you have the prequels, and you have the upcoming movies, and you have, the books, which there are no like Rey Sloane figures coming out or anything. But, right, they have like all these different Star Wars things to keep track of, like these different elements to keep track of that. Yeah, if they try to appease everyone or if they try to just like make stuff that sells, I'm not sure they figured out how to balance all that stuff yet.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting because it's, like I said, it feels like it's just a glut, and it's going to happen. Rogue One's going to come up against, is going to get cannibalized by episode 8, and then
yeah. And Rebels will probably still be going on, maybe, because I think when does Rebels start? No, Rebels starts in a month or so.
Right, and some people
so that might be over by the time Rogue One comes out. But even then, like, what do you do? Like, is there going to be Rebels stuff out while the show is on, or are they still going to be ramping up for the Force Awakens?
Right, and I almost feel like it's like people are kind of. I've already heard some people theorize that they think Rebels is not going to go for a 5-season run or technically a 6-season run like Clone Wars did. Like they're going to kind of tell a limited story so they can. But I mean, who knows? It's I don't know what the ratings. I assume it's like the first season just came out on disc.
Right.
I'm kind of hoping it'll show up on Netflix because they have that deal with Disney now. So I can kind of give another, and like a lot of times it's like I have to use the Disney XD app. I don't have and I have to like borrow a login from my mom, and then it's the XD app is the worst because every time you go to watch a thing you have to reauthorize, and it becomes this 5-minute process of logging in and
just to watch a 22-minute.
Right, and I usually never watch more than one episode at a sitting. Even though I will say the times I have done that, my feelings about Rebels have warmed up considerably. I think I'd say something like, I think that's something that when it comes back on, it'll be something that we cover on the show, rather than being like,
I'll certainly be watching,
especially compared to like recent books that have come out. You're just like,
so that's a nice transition. So Aftermath came out on Friday, I guess, or sometime soon, sometime recently. The reviews are mixed. I should be clear that neither Robert nor I have read the book yet. I am planning to read it. I have a copy on my computer. I just haven't had a chance to read it yet because I'm busy reading David Rakoff, I guess. But
you and your grown-up books.
Yeah. So before David Rakoff, I read the first book of the Expanse series because I wanted to at least read that one before it started in December. But anyway, and so Aftermath, this is not the one with Harry Morgan. This is Aftermath, Star Wars Journey to the Force Awakens Aftermath. Or it might be Journey to the Force Awakens Star Wars Aftermath. I've lost track of which one it is. So the reviews have been mixed, to say the least. And there's some concern that a lot of the negative reviews are like being intentionally written by people who haven't even read the book. They just don't like the idea that they got rid of the old canon, and so they're just gonna like put down whatever books come out. And there might be something to that.
Yeah,
they also released an excerpt of this book online a while back that you and I both read, and we were skeptical.
It's just the focus of the story. It's confusing that they.
Well, it sounds like there isn't really a focus of the story,
right?
And that's kind of the issue. And I understand. It sounds like the author did that intentionally to give this kind of like bird's eye view of what's going on in the galaxy and like all the different things that are happening in the aftermath of the Empire, the sort of losing its emperor and main enforcer at the Battle of Endor. So that's fine. That's certainly a choice to make, but
I don't think
so. There's also room to say whether that's the correct choice to make.
I don't believe that they gave this Chuck Wendig. I don't believe they gave him carte blanche and he decided to not use it. I feel like it was this idea of I don't know who makes the final decision. I mean, I assume that the Lucas Story Group is kind of the umpire of these things, that they don't dictate what people need to say, but in questions they give you answers. It's that kind of thing. Like,
right.
Well, I'm writing this story, and so I don't know who dictates what these stories are going to be. I mean, I know that an author has to send a proposal, and then the proposal has to go through the legal department, and then they sign off on it, and then you
In some ways, I think I think this has come up in the context of the comic books too, where the story group will have certain stories that they want out there, and or at least, hey, we should do a Kanan story, and so they'll go to someone and say like, hey, do you want to write a Kanan, series, or hey, do you want to write a Princess Leia series? And they'll probably have some idea of what that should be. So I think it's both, that sometimes authors do come to them with ideas or pitches, but then I think also it sounds like, and this goes back to our discussion of the movies and the directors, right? I think a lot of times the story group says like, okay, we want to tell a certain story, or we have this idea, we need to get from point A to point B, so let's hire someone to get us from point A to point B.
Right.
And it sounds, again, we haven't read the book, but it sounds to me like that's a lot of what this was, that they're like, all right, we need to fill in the space between Return of the Jedi and Force Awakens. A lot is happening. That's 30 years we need to cover. We have some other properties that are doing some of that. We've got Uprising that's apparently canon, that's going to, cover some of that. We have this Shattered Empire series that's going to cover some of that. But we need a book, like, Star Wars books are their own thing now. They're a big deal to people. So let's write a book that sort of sets the stage for getting us from, so that people understand how it is that we have this First Order and we have this other thing and we have the Resistance, right? So because I think also Gary Whitta, who, which one is he writing again? Is he writing the Boba Fett one?
He did the first major draft for Rogue One.
Okay, that's what it was.
He's no longer working for Lucasfilm.
Right. Yeah. But so apparently, like a year-ish ago, Chuck Wendig messaged Gary Whitta on Twitter and was like, hey, I would love to write a Star Wars thing. And so then a year-ish later, here is this book. And so that seems like a pretty short amount of time to me to write like these 400-page novels book. These novels aren't Tolstoy, right? Like they're not. But what would you say? They're not the most complicated things to write, but they still require like multiple drafts and editing and printing and everything. And so it sounds like the impression I'm getting is that Chuck Wendig was like, hey, I would love to write a Star Wars thing. And then Lucasfilm Story Group was like, great, here's a thing for you to write. And he was like, okay, great. And then they just kind of went from there and maybe didn't pay enough attention to like working out all the beats and like how it was going to be structured and the best way to get from point A to point B, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, I think when you're dealing with time frames of like, well, we've got toys are coming out on this day and a book's coming out on this day and a movie's coming out on this day. And then next year we got a whole nother movie. I think that the actual creative process has to take a back seat to the timeline. But yeah, I mean, I think a lot of the anger that I'm reading in these reviews, because it put me off of buying it, because I was excited. Mm-hmm. This was because I know I've complained a lot, Lords of the Sith, and I never did get around to reading Tarkin or A New Dawn, even though I keep saying I should. It just feels like...
which is funny because those are probably the two best written of the bunch.
Yeah. And so then it's like this idea, well, I thought this was going to be not necessarily Heir to the Empire. I mean, Heir to the Empire, it's like, you got, when you come back in 5 years later, it's the, in one chapter or whatever, 2 chapters, it sets, who's your new bad guy, what do they have, mm-hmm. There's a mystery set up because they're going to a planet, and then you're introduced to the idea that Luke is still conferring with Obi-Wan Kenobi 5 years later, and then Leia's pregnant, and Han, she's married to Han, blah blah blah, and it's like this thing where it's like, oh, okay, you're setting the scene, and I thought there might be not necessarily that, but it like mm-hmm. what immediately I assumed that it wasn't such a big deal to immediately, a week after Return of the Jedi to say like, oh, this is what's going on. But I guess they're just not, they don't want to let it, everything is like innuendo and it's rumor. So they're at the idea where the story is like, they could, if they find out later that something doesn't jive, they can just say, oh, that was a rumor, that kind of idea. Right. Like they're not, I feel like they're not.
I wonder how much of that too is kind of self-referential and the fact that the EU stuff is legends now, and they're like, well, maybe it happened, right? We're not saying it didn't happen. It's just we don't know if it happened. So I I kind of wonder if that like rumor stuff is sort of a reference to that, where it's like, well, we don't exactly what you said, where it's like, well, maybe this happened, but I guess we'll find out later if it really happened. Which is, again, is fine, but like it can be frustrating to read. And yeah, I mean, so I have this book, but reading those reviews and not the specific reviews themselves, but just sort of thinking about how the books have been so far.
Yeah.
Like I'm kind of put off now about reading too many more of these. Like I'll read Aftermath.
What else is in the pipe? I mean, I know there's a lot of these...
So they made it. They're making Aftermath into a trilogy of books. I know that. But yeah, beyond. So there are some short stories coming out in a month or two that we talked about last week. I think that deal with a lot of the characters that were set up in A New Dawn. And some of them are in Aftermath too. So there's Ray Sloan, who's an Imperial officer. Count Vidian, who is sort of an Imperial sort of contractor, or he's like an efficiency expert. And then Hera, there's going to be a short story about Hera, I think.
Because this all comes in the Tarkin re-release.
Right, so they're re-releasing Tarkin and A New Dawn and packaging them together with these 3 short stories. So those are coming out, but yeah, I don't know what else they have in development other than the Aftermath books. And so I wonder, the Aftermath trilogy that they greenlit before they even released this book, how much of that was like, well, based on how this book ended up, everything's like rumor and innuendo, and it's kind of like piecemeal. So we need some more books to like fit all of the pieces together.
Yeah.
And sort of build on that and, essentially like get a second shot at this, second and third shots at kind of turning this into something instead of just, let's turn this into something that people have to buy in order to keep up with the later Aftermath books that are going to come out, because otherwise we're worried that maybe people won't.
Yeah. I mean, and the thing is, I was kind of hoping that these books were going to, there was the one thing I thought we're really hoping that these books would feel was essential.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And they do not at all.
And like to the idea that like, oh, you're going to get so many, there's tons of people that are going to be like, I'm going to go to the theater and I'll watch the movie. I'm not watching no Rebels. I'm not looking at toys. I just want to see this movie. And I totally respect that viewpoint. But for
that's honestly, that's kind of where I think I might be headed. Like I'll watch Rebels. Well, that's not what I was going to say, but now I'm naming all this other stuff I'll do. I'll watch Rebels. I'll read the comics, but even then I'm not like super invested in the comics. It's more just out of curiosity of like, oh, let's see what they're doing with this.
Right.
And even those don't feel like super essential to me.
Which is the exact...
But then the movies will start being like the main thing for me again.
Yeah, which really feels like the exact opposite of the way things were 20 years ago, where, I would sit there and decide to myself, like, do I get lunch or do I put that money towards that $20 Last Command hardcover that I don't want to wait, 8 months for it to go to softcover. Whereas these books, it's like I'm like picking up Aftermath at Target, and I like I said, I read a couple excerpts, and I'm like, I don't know if I want to get this. I don't know if I want to drop $20 on this, because it just feels like it doesn't matter. It doesn't feel like it's like I'm like, you're introducing a bunch of characters I don't care about. I mean, and I was all for I got to when I finally officially jumped ship on reading Star Wars.
Mm-hmm.
Which I was picking and choosing at the time. It was probably like 10 years ago when it got to be like, I don't know, the Swarm War, when they had like, they did some trilogy where it was like insects. And I mean, I didn't go too heavy into Vector Prime, and it's because I kind of, I read Vector Prime but then I started reading the sequel to Vector Prime, and I was just like, then I was starting to get turned off. I was like, oh, this is, they killed off Chewbacca. This is getting way too strung out. And so I was all for I was totally like, even before Disney bought Star Wars, I would say, like, to anybody who cared to listen, which is probably my wife in the wall, is that they needed to reboot. They needed to reboot the expanded universe. They needed to just drop, Thrawn.
They had kind of taken it as far as they were going to go.
Right. They'd already, the characters. Actually, most of the characters were actually further down. They were in their 70s at this point in the canon. So it was kind of like, and this whole idea now that Lucasfilm, like, everything's canon. I think they're going to quickly find out that was a mistake. I'm not saying that they should they should make books that they turn around 2 months later diminish. I just feel rather the idea that they're going like, oh, well, this is the tapestry of Star Wars, and this all happened now. We're not gonna like, come up with, G level canon and, EU level canon. I mean, I think that having those tiers of canon, I think were actually a much better idea. That they definitely should have jettisoned the EU and started afresh. But, maybe if they're afraid that somehow showing where our favorite characters are 30 years down the road because something happens immediately after, Jedi, or within the first few years that, affect what's going to happen in these movies, and they don't want a thing, and they like, well, maybe you should have held off. Maybe you should have held off on having anything until, maybe you could have just kept it like they did with I know they have those short, young reader gauged books that have come out. They're like Nine Numb and Princess Leia, and then there's a couple others. I picked one up. I mean, it's pretty rudimentary reading type stuff. It's not. I don't like reading that. Even I don't like reading stuff at that level. It's just kind of, to me, it's like, oh, okay, this is way too childish.
Well, this is clearly not written for me. So anything that I don't like about it, it's my fault for reading a book aimed at
kids,
13-year-olds.
Yeah, and it's. I just think it's like you could have that, if you want to do that rich tapestry, like, oh, let's tell a story that took place, 2 weeks after the Battle of Yavin. Let's talk about, them. Let's tell the thing about how they found Hoth. Let's talk about, the dark, Lando's first mission with Chewbacca. I mean, all that stuff would have been great. It would have gotten people jazzed up about it. I mean, this way, Aftermath doesn't really, it doesn't talk about anything, so we don't know anything about where anybody is at. We're just saying, oh, well, this is what the galaxy's like. And then I don't know if you want to get into this. There were some hints about, well, let's wait till you read the book, and then you can, because you sent me
we'll read the book.
You sent me an excerpt that said there might be some connection.
The character, from the original trilogy, we might learn his fate in this book. But in terms of what they have in the pipe, so the two more Aftermath books, they've got this Star Wars Battlefront tie-in novel, Twilight Company, and then that's kind of it. That's all that they've announced, at least on their website. The rest is all just comic book stuff. So you would think if they have, they probably don't want. I guess they'll have the Force Awakens novelization coming out, so maybe they want everyone focused on that. But I'm not seeing too many hints or releases about upcoming novels other than Twilight Company and then whatever happens with the other two Aftermath novels, which, I mean, maybe that's fine. Maybe they need to, we've talked about before how the books that are already out now, with the exception of Aftermath, but the other ones were essentially, and I guess in New Dawn, that was written specifically for the new stuff, but the rest of them were essentially in development already when they announced it, the other stuff isn't canon anymore. So these are just canon, just sort of by way of timing.
Right.
So maybe this is an opportunity for them to sort of, on the publishing end, take a deep breath, figure out what they're going to do, set it up for the next several years, and then really kind of build it with a plan in mind rather than, just kind of going piecemeal the way they are now.
Yeah, I mean,
because that's with the EU, a lot of the continuity problems eventually came up because you would have, a novel that got published kind of in this time period, and then a novel that got published that took place 20 years later. But then however many years later, someone would write a novel that took place before all that happened. And so then they had to fit the two together. And if they publish them so that they happened in this like linear timeline, I'm sure people would get bored with that. But it also would probably help avoid a lot of the continuity problems that they're having. So if they want to say like, all right, we're starting, let's fill in, this period between Return of the Jedi and Force Awakens, let's just fill that in as much as we can. We'll let the comic books fill in the period, between all of the original trilogy movies. But we'll fill in this time period with as many books as we can, and then from there, we'll put that away, and then we'll go figure out what's happening after Episode 9, or then we'll figure out what we'll fill in the period in between the original trilogy and the prequel trilogy again, and we'll work in that area, like rather than doing this piecemeal thing, because that's where they're gonna, I think, come into some continuity issues that then is going to make everyone go like, well, then why did you bother resetting this thing anyway?
Exactly. Especially if they start picking stuff from books where they're like, oh, Shadow of the Empire is now canon again or something, which I don't think. I think it's specifically a Legends title now.
Yeah, but it is. But Prince Shizor is still a character. Still exists.
Yeah, he's in Clone Wars, isn't he?
Yeah. Yeah, even then, if he wasn't, I mean, if my understanding of how this works is like, yeah, the stories themselves might not be true, or they may or may not be true, but like the characters still exist in this universe. The planet still exists in this universe. It's just that the events may be different. And so, like, technically, I think like there's still a Prince Shizor in the directory of characters that someone could pull out and say like, yeah, let's do something with this guy.
Right. It's I don't know. I think I'm where you're at. It's like, I just don't know how much time I can dedicate to these books until I really feel like I'm not like this constant idea of like, oh, I'm just having my appetite whetted. It's like, I just, I need some, I need something substantial.
Right. If they're gonna sort of exert pressure on people to keep up with all of this stuff, however subtle that pressure might be, and it's not that subtle, but if they're trying to say like, oh, you can follow Star Wars in whatever capacity you want, but by the way, here are these 8 books that tell the story of how we got to the Force Awakens. If they're going to do that, then they need to make these things actually compelling to read. So here's hoping that they figure that side of the equation out at some point soon.
So transitioning to another thing, they also announced pre-orders for the soundtrack.
Oh yeah, the soundtrack's going to be released in stores the same day as the movie, I think, right?
Yeah, which, at first I was a little taken back because it didn't actually, the pre-order link I would go to kind of timed out, went to a weird place. I couldn't tell what format it was being released in.
Oh, where were you trying to pre-order it?
I think it was like a Disney site or something.
Which
is ridiculous, because why would I do that? Because it's like, I get Amazon or whatever, they'll just send it to you the day of. Yeah. So it's not worth it doing that. But then later I found that they, there's just some placeholder artwork, because I assume that Drew Struzan is still working on the poster, and
I hope so.
Yeah, and then like it's coming out in CD. I haven't heard any announcement of a vinyl release. I mean, obviously, a digital release is a foregone conclusion. I haven't heard anything about exclusives, which they did do for. The only time they did.
Sorry, I just. Yeah.
No, what?
Well, no, I sorry to interrupt. So I went to the StarWars.com release announcement of it, and the link, it says, oh, it's now available for pre-order. You're right, it takes you to a website called DisneyMusicEmporium.com, which is like, that sounds like the fakest thing that someone just makes up, as like it's like a Russian website designed to steal your money.
Exactly. I mean, and I think that's kind of where they're at right now with music as a thing. It's like, well, I know they'll do a vinyl release, because that's everybody's doing a vinyl release, and the digital thing is ether, so nobody cares about it. It's like it just gets sent to your phone.
No, and I will say, if you click on the click here for product info button, it just refreshes the page. It doesn't give you any additional information.
It's terrible.
I mean, the fact that they're saying it will be released in stores means we'll at least get a CD. Fingers crossed that we'll get, a 3-cassette edition.
Yeah, I mean, Target
for next year's Record Store Day, I want a 4-cassette, a 2-cassette, 4-sided, version of the soundtrack. But so we'll at least get a CD. But yeah, whether it'll be on vinyl, who knows?
Hey, now don't say. I wish they re-released some of those vintage Story of Star Wars records for Record Store Day, because my I never did get it. Return of the Jedi. I have that on cassette. They're in bad shape though. All the booklets are gone and stuff. What was I going to say?
Sorry.
I threw myself off topic because I was thinking about Target back in the day when Attack of the Clones came out. They actually had a extra track on the CD. So now I have that. It's like I think it was because the Droid Foundry scene had been added so late in production. Yeah, that the soundtrack CDs had already been made. So Target actually did a run where they had the Droid Foundry music on there, which I think is actually slightly recycled themes or whatever. I mean, it's like, well, they're going to do. They haven't announced it yet, but there's going to be another release of the soundtracks on vinyl or something. But it'll be interesting because, are they going to release them? Are they going to reissue what came out in 83 for Return of the Jedi? Are they going to dump, the Yub Yub song?
Right.
Because it's like, that's the way they, when they did the 2-disc special edition CD things with the laser etched discs, they dumped all the old unused themes, which are only available on the original editions, or if you have like the original soundtrack anthology box set, which is I always considered the definitive release of those soundtracks anyway. Yeah,
no, those are the best versions, I think.
It's one of those ones when the special editions, those 4-disc box sets had been reduced to such, like, I saw them in stores new for $10. Sealed. Yeah. I was buying those. Like, everybody I knew that liked Star Wars got those for Christmas for like 3 years. It's like, you like Star Wars? Here's your anthology. I'm sure they're all still sealed, knowing people. They're like,
I'm reading up more about. So I also found the soundtrack for pre-order on Amazon. So if Walt Disney Music Emporium or whatever is not doing it for you. But according to Amazon, it's being released on Walt Disney Records, which I didn't even know they had their label. It makes sense because they are so involved in music.
They do.
It's founded by Roy O. Disney, who suggested that they form their own record label. The only current artists are Dove Cameron, which sounds a little bit like a Star Wars character, and then the Muppets. But, former artists on this label include Christina Aguilera, the Cheetah Girls, Billy Ray and Miley Cyrus, Lana Del Rey, the Doodle Bops, Hilary Duff, Selena Gomez, the Jonas Brothers, Demi Lovato, Raven Simone, etc.
All the greats.
Yeah. So, because this was an issue for the soundtracks when they released. This was especially an issue for the prequel soundtracks, but how are these things going to sound? Because I don't know that Walt Disney Records, that they're really known for really capturing that, orchestral sound on tape, right? How are these things going to be mixed? How are these things going to be mastered? Are they going to be hiring the best people to do this, or are they just going to use whoever they have in house?
Yeah, it's such a different change. He's not recording in London.
Right.
I kind of get the.
It's in LA with basically a freelance. Group, I think.
And I kind of get the feeling that this soundtrack is being composed in a slightly more piecemeal fashion than maybe other ones. Maybe I'm completely wrong about this, and hey, listeners, if I'm wrong, if you guys have an insight, let us know.
Yeah.
But I always thought that it was like that. Music and sound effects were kind of like the last things done.
Yeah.
And we've been getting drips and drabs of you have a better ear for that, about hearing this sounds like this theme, but it sounds like it's been re-recorded. And so he's been re-recording themes, and he's been kind of working for months on this thing.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it sounds like they've been recording stuff for a while, but I don't know how much of that was like, hey, we want to make this trailer. Why don't you re-record some music for it? You know, I don't know how much of that recording sessions were specifically for the trailers and how much of that was for the Force Awakens that they just, you know, and they just used the same themes and re-recorded them. I don't know. I mean, the only like new music I think we've gotten was in that Instagram thing. And it sounded fine to me there, but you know, that's different than hearing it on a CD or hearing it on your computer, or, you know, even seeing it on Instagram is different than hearing it as an MP3 or a FLAC or an OGG, whatever your preferred music extension is. I don't know. I'm getting to the point I said where, you know, I was kind of like even keeled about the trilogy movies, and I was like, yeah, whatever happens. But with this soundtrack stuff, now I'm starting to get like nervous, because like this is one of the things that means the most to me is this music, and it's like I'm nervous that they are going to pull this off.
Yeah, it's almost like are they like undercutting it? Or are they going to they're going to like, oh, all right, we're going to release the soundtrack's going to come out on the day on a CD.
We'll do a quickie release, and then in another year or whatever, we'll do this, you know, when episode 8 comes out, we'll do, you know, the remastered episode 7.
I mean, when the original, the very, very first Star Wars, when that thing came out, the 2-record set, that thing sold like gangbusters. I mean, that was you still to this day see that in record stores. Now that there was diminishing returns, like for some reason Empire didn't. They may have released it as a 2-record set, but I've never seen it, you know, in stores. And then it's like, and then by the time Jedi came out, it was already kind of like, it was CDs, or was kind of in its infancy. And
yeah,
I mean, going back to, like you said, record store day, it's like, well, is Star Wars soundtrack, is that going to be like, well, we're not going to put a lot of effort into it because people don't buy music, and we're not going to, and John Williams is not writing a Duel of the Fates type theme like that we can make a music video for. So what's the point in promoting this record, because kids don't listen to entire albums anymore anyway? It's like, we could do a series of ringtones with just the main opening themes and get just as much traction as doing a 72-minute long score on a CD. And it's, you know, I mean, they've tried different, like I said, they got they did the Phantom Menace was a pretty straightforward 1-disc release. That's what it seems like this is going to be, because if the pre-order is only $14, I'm guessing it's 1 disc, because if it was 2 discs, they could easily get $20 for it, right? You know, by the time they did Revenge of the Sith, the first, you know, 50,000 of them came with a DVD with where they introduced what's his face, Ian McDiarmid introduces, does like this little thing, and I mean that kind of stuff they don't do that anymore, because it's just a waste of plastic, because people are just going to go, I'll go watch that on the website. I'm not going to put a disc in my TV.
Yeah.
So it becomes like, it's such a niche idea that, like, well, who's actually, you know, no one's going to go to FYE at the mall and say, you guys got the new Star Wars soundtrack? No, but we've got 18,000, you know, Beanie Babies that with what's the Gavarian Guards or whatever they're called.
The Guavian gang.
The Guavian gang.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Maybe this idea of a proper soundtrack release is just an artifact of generations past. Like, nobody's going to care that it's not being represented. Which, you know, I'm still waiting for these definitive prequel ones with some of the outtakes, or, you know.
Yeah, I have a feeling we're not going to get those.
We're never going to get those. You can buy bootlegs. Some people have been able to piece together bootlegs out of, like, stems taken from video games or you know, surreptitiously, I don't know. Stuff they've gotten off of Blu-rays or whatever, but by no means is it definitive. Like, so I don't know. It's, what else do we got on this? I think we've beat that into the ground.
Yeah. It's just, we're worried. Bottom line, we're worried. We've kind of stopped caring about the books, but now we're worried about the soundtracks.
So I guess
if it's not one thing, it's another.
So the only other thing the news that came up that was kind of more movie based, which is is that everybody knows Mads Mikkelsen is going to be in this Rogue One.
Mm-hmm.
What people are speculating now is he signed an autograph for a fan, and he signed it with his name, and then under it he put Galen.
Right. So other former Star Wars actors signed it and then put their character names with it. So it wasn't just him.
Oh, really? Who else?
I can't remember, but I don't think he would. Anthony Daniels. Anthony Daniels would have put like C-3PO.
There wasn't any big reveals.
No.
So
I think that was it.
And so people immediately thought that it was referring to Galen. Oh, I can't remember his name. A character from it's like a blind Jedi from.
Phil Lamar signed it, I think, and wrote like Kit Fisto because that's the voice
he did the Clone Wars,
stuff like that.
But I mean, I guess they thought, they're bringing in this, an EU character, and I could say that no, I can pretty authoritatively, even though I have no reason to be authoritative about it. But I feel like they're not going to bring in a character from a video game that was already kind of set up as being a non-canon video game. I mean, you can play the character of Starkiller, and you can actually kill Ben Kenobi. Right. You can kill Luke Skywalker.
So if Galen Merrick became known as Starkiller,
that's it.
And was the secret apprentice of Darth Vader. Like he's not playing the same person. If there's already a Starkiller base, like unless they named it the base after this guy, I guess it's possible for Rogue One that, Darth Vader had a secret apprentice that we didn't know about. But again, they run into the problem of like, all right, so why do we never hear about this apprentice?
Yeah,
in A New Hope.
That's all. That's all covered, and that's all covered in the game. I mean, the story. If you're not a gamer and you think, go look at the cutscenes for the Force Unleashed 1 and 2. Specifically the first one, it's pretty good stuff. It's I got my description wrong here at the beginning of this, is that I'm thinking of a different character, but yeah, Sam Witwer plays this Galen character that becomes Starkiller. Mm-hmm. A lot of people say, the only other Galen is Roddy McDowall portrayed like in the Planet of the Apes TV series, there was a Galen character, and since Gary Whitta was involved in writing it, might have been just a nod to another sci-fi kind of esque name where it's. I don't think there's I don't think there's any kind of hidden meaning in the Galen name. I think they just needed to me, that sounds very like a very 70s sci-fi kind of like character. Galen. There'll always be some kind of like, Battlestar Galactica. They have to go to some guy and his name's Galen, because I've never met a Galen in my life. So.
Yeah.
And the only other thing that I was thinking of, and I always call these my like late night Star Wars thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
Is that we have not seen, we've only seen like, 2 teasers. So we're talking maybe 2 minutes tops behind the scenes, footage or whatever 3-minute thing. We have not seen one iota of any kind of space travel. It's implied because they're going to different planets. It's implied because there's spaceships.
Yeah.
But we have not seen. There's been no inkling and no even hint that there might be any kind of thing approaching a space battle in this movie.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you're right. They have to we've seen them on a desert planet, and we've seen them on this kind of like snowy, mountainous planet. And they have to get from point A to point B somehow. But, yeah, we haven't seen any sign that, like... I mean, I guess there wasn't much of a space battle in A New Hope. Or even Empire Strikes Back either, right? There were, like, a couple of ships shooting at each other. But
I mean, come on. There was the Death Star trench run.
Well, that's more... I was thinking, when I hear space battle, I think more of the one at the end of Return of the Jedi. Where you have like these huge ships like fighting each other. I mean, the Death Star, it took place in space, but it felt to me more like, it was in space, but the spaceships weren't like they were going down this trench and they were, shooting it was almost as if exactly what we've seen in these trailers, like spaceships like fighting over a planet, like in the atmosphere of a planet. So yeah, I mean, I guess that's a space battle-ish. It is. Oh yeah, it is. I say these things without thinking sometimes, like Luke Skywalker only uses his lightsaber twice in the entire original trilogy. Which I think we're up to like 10 times.
Yeah, I think I figured out a couple ones after last week.
I missed, even after like going up to 8, I missed a couple. But you're right. This is, I won't say it's been bothering me, but like this is where the tension between space opera and like hard science fiction comes in or whatever. Because having ships that size, like especially a Star Destroyer or whatever, but even something like the Millennium Falcon, having that fly around in the atmosphere of a planet, like I don't know that works. In the books, the EU novels address this too. Like they almost never had X-Wings or the Millennium Falcon or anything fight in atmosphere. And if they did, they like commented like, wow, this is a lot harder to, TIE fighters can't really maneuver in atmosphere very well or whatever.
Right.
But now it seems like, they don't really care because you've got those TIE fighter, the X-Wings, flying over that lake in the thing and they're going super fast or whatever. So it doesn't seem like they're paying that as much attention to that issue, which again, right, this is a space opera. It's not, a parsec is not a unit of time or whatever.
Yeah.
But it's, I don't know. I wish they had kind of adhered to that, and maybe they did. And I'm overthinking this, but seeing all this like these dogfights in the atmosphere is like, well,
yeah. I will say that I did.
Yes,
I will correct myself and say there is one shot of a shuttle approaching a Star Destroyer of some sort. I think it's in the second teaser. But yeah, that's the only thing of space.
But not like a space battle.
Yeah, there's no kind of action. There's no sense of speed. There's no chase. Now, that might be because they're saving it because it's so good and they don't want to... Like I said, they're really, 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 keeping that original cast back as a thing, especially Luke. Mm-hmm. Which, I have a new Luke theory that's probably not true, but it's like I'm kind of obsessed with it. But it's a spoiler, so I won't say it.
Right.
But it's just, you see these toys and like there's a snow Finn. Finn goes to the snow. He's on Jakku, and then there's a forest battle.
Right.
So it's like, well, are we talking 3 planets?
Yeah. The forest might be on the snowy planet.
Yeah, I was kind of thinking that it's not like, since
but
it's not
still,
Hoth, you're on a mountain base or something.
Yeah. Right.
It's like, well, is it, I don't know. I'm already speculating in my mind. I can't help but like go, well, is that there's like this concept of escape. Is it, is Finn, is he escaping when they show the lights on the X-Wings? Is he escaping the base that, is the rebel base? Is he trying to get away? Does it get attacked and he tries to run off or something?
Right.
There's that line where on his toy where he says, "If we go back to Jakku, we die."
Yeah. Which
implies that he gets off Jakku, but who is he admonishing? Yeah. Is he
right?
It's this it'll be interesting because. It really, my kind of, not my fear, but my concern is that like it's all going to be way more practical than we could ever have imagined. It's just going to be
right.
It's like, oh, this story's not going to be as big as we wanted it to be.
Well, it's if you think to A New Hope, how did they get on the Death Star? It's because they flew to Alderaan and it wasn't there, and then the Death Star was. That's how they ended up on the Death Star. But getting from Tatooine to Alderaan, like they just were there, and it was really just a way to have this bigger to have Obi-Wan start teaching Luke a little bit, and then have Han there to be the skeptic. Like, it wasn't this big, huge, like, massive, event or battle in the movie to get from, they didn't really have to blast their way out of Tatooine. They had to evade these 2 ships, but they evaded the Star Destroyers pretty easily. And so, yeah, like it wasn't a huge beat in the story to have them just leave Tatooine.
Right. Yeah, hopefully they won't have to go back to Jakku, because that's the one I think about. One of the, the million things you can complain about the Phantom Menace, but it's the idea that they leave Naboo and then they end up coming, which was to me was the most boring planet in the movies.
Right. Like, why didn't you go back to?
And then they go back.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't know. So maybe, hopefully, I don't know. I assume that there'll be a final battle of something. There has to be, because it's a Star Wars movie.
Yeah.
Whether it'll be a big battle or a personal battle remains to be seen.
Yep.
So maybe we should kind of just wrap it up. Go a little short.
Yeah, I think that's...
I know you had a long weekend. You've been traveling, so maybe we'll...
Yeah, I was out of town, so my first Friday was this morning, but...
Exactly. We'd love to hear comments, complaints, even. I think I'm emotionally...
You do?
I'm emotionally all right to set up to accept a complaint, even though maybe not. Don't complain, but let us know you're out there. You can review us on iTunes. I appreciate that. Mm-hmm. I think we are now listed as a Star Wars podcast, which was something we weren't, because I'm not very bright when it comes to tags and whatnot. I was like, geez, there are a lot of. I will say this.
We're learning.
I will say this in my attempt to expand our listenership. I was actually kind of shocked about how many Star Wars podcasts there are, because there's ones that suffer the same fate as us that don't necessarily get listed on iTunes when you search Star Wars. So hello to them. I'm probably not going to listen to you, and you're probably not going to listen to me, but hello anyway.
We're kindred spirits, eh?
Kindred spirits. You can engage with us at talkingbirdcast at gmail.com. We are at talkingbirdcast at Twitter. We have a Tumblr at Tumblr. No, is it talkingbirdStarWars.tumblr.com?
That's it.
We're on Facebook / Talking Bird Podcast on Facebook. We are on Stitcher Radio. You can look for us there if you're more of a Stitcher Radio fan. If there's a format that, like I said, if there's a format that you would really prefer that we were on, let us know and I'll look into it. But right now it seems to be working for where it is. We will be back next week, I think, talking more about Star Wars from Talking 4. Sorry. We've changed the time we do these, so I'm not fully awake anymore when I do. For Talking Birdcast, I have been Robert Zachary.
I remain John Llewellyn.
And may your next Force Friday be brighter. Thanks for listening.
Star Wars. You and your children loved it. Now, the Earthlings at Kenner have asked my associate and me to present the Star Wars collection. Truly remarkable toys and games for your children. What are you so excited about now? My goodness, the Star Wars TIE Fighter and X-Wing fighter. Now your children can relive our great space battles or collect our wonderful Star Wars companions with Kenner's Star Wars action figures. R2, it's a little you. Kenner's new radio-controlled R2-D2 anyone can command. The Star Wars land speeder that moves like it's floating. And here's Kenner's Death Star space station, 4 floors of action. A trash compactor, too. Listen, R2. That's the Star Wars electronic laser battle, a game of speed, reflex, and reaction. These and other toys and games in Kenner's Star Wars collection are sold separately. Batteries are not included. May the Force be with you and your children.